Good evening, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing another video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know, and that is relativity and gifting. I'm going to make that make sense, I hope, in just a moment. Relativity and gifting. First of all, relativity, comparisons, right? Something relative to something else in value or scale or proportion. Relativity and gifting. This is an idea, and I'm kind of giving it my own title, but there's a definite idea here, and you might recognize it. It's when somebody doesn't have something of great value to give as a gift, they might give you something smaller and create a situation where you're grateful for the thing that they give you, such as an unblocking or an honorary award or a license that is a permit or a permission to do something, which is a form of unblocking. And if you really look objectively at these types of gifts, quote unquote gifts, you see right off the bat that there's a value only in that they had taken something away initially. So there wasn't really an expense on their part. Interesting idea. And I want to connect this with something very important and practical. Turns out this principle is at play currently in U.S. courts. And I have been, unfortunately, in many U.S. courts across the country, from the West Coast to the East Coast. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I lived in New York City, and I've lived in California. I was born and raised in California, so I know both sides of the country, and I've had, unfortunately, experience in both court systems. And they both have something in common nowadays. And it's not widely understood or advertised, but it is the practice of obtaining a punishment without a conviction many times. So I'm going to describe that just a little bit differently. Hopefully it'll make even more sense. Obtaining a sentence without any evidence, without any due process, without a trial, and without a conviction. How do they do this, you ask? Many, many ways. And I'm going to, in a few minutes here, just expose it, I hope. So what happens is, first of all, Americans are guaranteed a speedy trial. It's part of the rights that we are guaranteed and told about in school. A right to a speedy trial is pretty famous. Maybe you've heard of it. However, there are controls that have been imposed on the entire process at every stage of the process, so that when the administration, when an authority or the courts decide that they want to take control of a person or a situation, they have total power, total unquestioning power to stall the process, to derail it, to make the person disappear. And this is kind of scary. So this is what they do. For example, and I'm going to tell a true story, 100% true from my own experience. I was in Manhattan, living there for a couple of years, and looking for work. Not really relevant to this video, but I was outdoors. You can imagine that the winters are cold and the summers are pretty warm if you know about the climate in New York City. Living outdoors is not easy anywhere, but especially not in New York City. So, you know, in my defense, I was not 100% clear in my thinking, and I'll admit that I was behaving a little bit strangely, not in any dangerous way, but people didn't necessarily have a way to know that just in a casual meeting. So here's the thing. After a couple of years, long story short, I received an invitation from a family member on the West Coast to come home, and I decided I was ready to do that. I obtained from this person, my mother, a paid ticket to get on a plane. It was an electronic ticket, and it was to deliver me back into California, and I was going to meet her, and we communicated through email. It was all confirmed. I received the electronic ticket, and all I had to do was get on the plane and fly to California. So that's what I aimed to do. I walked from Manhattan all the way to LaGuardia Airport. That's a heck of a walk, and it was raining, and my feet were wet, and I was a mess. And I walked into the airport, and I had one thing on my mind, and that was to get to the gate on time. Like many travelers, right? Get on a plane, you don't want to be late. You miss your flight potentially. So I get in there, and unfortunately, because of my experiences and a personal decision that had made my life a little bit easier up till that point, I had decided to stop talking to people in general. Maybe that sounds strange. It shouldn't sound threatening necessarily, I hope, unless you're not quite. Anyway, story is I go into the airport. I walk up to the counter and get my boarding pass. That is, the full-blown pass to get on the plane. I actually still had my California driver's license. They issue the pass, and I get into the security checkpoint line to advance into the gates, right? Where if you've been to an airport, especially a big international airport like LaGuardia, there's a long security checkpoint you have to get through before you enter the inner area where you board the planes. So that I got into that line with my boarding pass, with my driver's license, and I think my plan was, if I recall, I was going to just get there and then clean myself up in a bathroom or whatever, because I was, honestly not too ready to get on a plane, but I'm 100% sure I was going to deal with it before I did, because I'm not stupid. Anyway, I was in the line, and the TSA take a look at me, and they asked me, "What's that on your back?" And it was just my backpack, right? But since I had been being creative in my endeavors, I had been, building stuff as an artist, and I had some questionable wires and stuff on my backpack, and it wasn't designed to look like anything, but I understand their confusion. Unfortunately, I refused to answer them. I'm not going to make this a super long video. I refused to speak to the TSA people. So this is an interesting thing. They pulled me out of line. Okay, long story short, pulled me out of line, arrested me, closed the entire airport, detained me, and it became national news. So a giant international airport was closed for the better part of a whole day, and I was very quickly branded as a terrorist, and without any kind of evidence or process, I was taken to Rikers Island, and then immediately to the Bellevue Psychiatric Facility that's also in Manhattan. It's a skyscraper, and they have mental health floors on the upper levels. And I stayed there, long story short again, for a couple months, and then for observation purposes, because it was such a big incident that was reported in the national news, they wanted to be 100% sure before they did anything what was going on. So they shipped me upstate to the Mid-Hudson Forensic Psychiatric Hospital. And this is what I'm talking about with my original topic, how if the authorities decide for whatever reason to detain somebody, they've got 1,000 tools in their box to do this. At this point, at the exact point where you're taken out of jail, for any reason, your case is paused indefinitely. It is on ice. You are not advancing. You are not entitled to a hearing or a lawyer. You are not subject to bail. You are not subject to release. You are not subject to anything, and they can keep you forever until you die. Okay? People aren't understanding this. Until a doctor decides that you're, capable to stand trial. They call it being fit for trial. They do competency testing, and I ended up passing it, obviously, because I'm not in there anymore. But I was in this new place for a couple of months. I ended up being detained. They released me back to Rikers Island after they finally decided that I wasn't necessarily a serious threat. They released me back to Rikers Island, where I spent 8 more months waiting while my case was delayed, postponed for weather and all kinds of stuff. You don't necessarily see a judge. You don't see a lawyer. I didn't have, until near the end, I had a lawyer. So I just want to wrap this. I'm almost at 10 minutes, but it's a big story. So after 11 months of being bounced around and being traumatized, to be frank, having my health destroyed by the diet and the conditions in there, it's inhuman. I was finally released without being charged. I'm going to say that again. I was never convicted. I was never prosecuted. I was never even charged. All charges were dropped. I was released on the condition and the expectation that I would informally participate in a program in California, and that was the end of it. And this happens every day. People are detained, they are punished, they are even tortured, and that's a separate video, separate incident. Maybe I'll talk about that someday. People need to wake up. You think you have rights? You have the rights that they let you think you have until they decide that you shouldn't. That's the absolute truth. And I speak from painful personal experience on numerous occasions. If you think you have rights, you need to wake up. You have what they let you have in this moment. You are not in jail right now today because this morning someone decided that you wouldn't be. Good luck tomorrow, I guess. Hey, and the next day, because every day you get a review, whether you realize it or not. So, maybe insist on getting a conviction. I don't even know what the answer is to that. How do you fight that? How do you fight getting detained for 11 months without an apology or anything? How do you fight that? And then they do it again. That's a different video. All right. Have a great night. Reach out with questions or comments to whitehotrobot@gmail.com. Thank you.